So let's get to this last one, which will be it's a fascinating question. And so it's a twofold one, and we'll start with the question coming from the big fella. My question is, how many teams would you put in the one trade away category going into the trade deadline? For example, the Cavs, Heat, and Suns are all teams I would say need one more decent trade to put them in the full level of contention. How many teams do you put into that category given full health, of course? And so I separated it like follows, and I talked about this with you before we went into it. The don't need a trade. I want to see if you would add anybody to this. Boston, Denver, Memphis, and Milwaukee.
Maybe Brooklyn, and maybe Philly, but both of those teams could be improved by a trade. I just don't know. I could see them being in that discussion, but the point is taken that like those 4 teams you mentioned, if everybody's healthy, I think those are right now are the 4 best teams and could get away with not doing anything.
I don't know what to do with the Nets. I had them in the one trade away category, but you brought up an interesting point that it's like if Kevin Durant isn't healthy, you're just not in the title discussion. They're 5th in defense so far. So if it just comes down to whether Kevin Durant's healthy. Like no trade you make. People have talked about a backup big. I think that's a little bit overstated just because you have Nick Claxton and Ben Simmons, and we're going to add another non-shooter to the equation. If it's Miles Turner, sure, but that's like one pretty massive trade away. So you know what? I'm going to add the Nets to the no trade one. You talked me into that.
Thank you.
I think the Sixers could probably still use some wing depth, so I'm going to have them one trade away. But here's my more than a trade away teams that are honorable mentions I think people might be expecting. I have the Clippers and the Mavericks in here, to where I don't think there's a realistic trade they could make that's going to make them title like favorites, contenders, a team that I believe is going to win the championship. I believe I'll receive the most pushback on putting the Clippers here.
That they're more than one trade away?
That people probably believe that they deserve to be in the no trade away discussion or they're one trade away.
What about this season? I mean, the injury thing is like an injury to a team's best player takes all these teams out of it, basically. So like, except that the problem with the Clippers is we already know that their best players are just not necessarily injured, but not available. So I think I agree that there's not like a player out there that changes the Clippers' fate, in a meaningful way that they could realistically get. It could improve them, but it's almost like trades aren't even the issue for the Clippers, really, to me.
So you would agree with having those 2 teams in there then?
I'm good with that.
So here are my one trade away teams. And then we can get to targets very quickly. I know you have to get out of here too. I have the Miami Heat, Cleveland Cavaliers, New Orleans Pelicans, Golden State Warriors, Phoenix Suns, with the caveat that when you hear the trade targets, they're like one massive trade away, and then the Philadelphia 76ers.
Okay. So the 2 that jumped to mind first for me, I think I agree with those also, but the Warriors and the Cavs, and I'll just take the Cavs first. Like we probably said it on this podcast. I already can't remember. We talk about it every time. They need a small forward. That's the piece to me that they need to get. The problem is like, they just, again, reiterating, how do you go get a 3-and-D wing right now in a market that just really does not have them? What do you have? I don't have any solutions for that, because all of them are just like not interesting. Every write-up you see is just like super underwhelming. Jalen McDaniels maybe, but I don't know.
On the lower end, I would be curious, and I mentioned his name already, Damian Lee, if the Suns decide to sell or just willing to, hey, we're not going to have him around next season or something. That's just someone who's cost effective. But I have wondered, between Karis LeVert and second round draft equity, could you get Gary Trent Jr.? Or do you think there are going to be offers that just beat that?
I think that's a best case. That'd be great. I do. Trent isn't quite, I want like a 6'7", 6'8" guy if I could, to fill that spot. Trent's not quite that rangy, but he's been a steals monster in the past. I'd feel way better about him on, I don't know, Jason Tatum than Donovan Mitchell, or really maybe Mobley is the guy that has to guard him anyway. But yeah, something like that would be, I do that in a heartbeat, because I think LeVert is really superfluous on that team, especially with Rubio back.
The other thing, and this feels like the most realistic one, would you do, and it doesn't have to be any other money involved, but just Karis LeVert for Josh Richardson. And if the Spurs want to give you some other money back, like you figure that out. But Karis LeVert for Josh Richardson, I don't know what the Spurs want with Karis LeVert. Maybe it's a 3-team scenario, like you sending Karis LeVert to Dallas, who's sending something to San Antonio. But if you're giving up Karis LeVert, first of all, you don't even need to give up Karis LeVert to get Josh Richardson. You could go something like Isaac Okoro and Jetty Osman, or Isaac Okoro and Dylan Windler. So something along that line.
If I'm the Spurs, I think I'm probably more interested in Okoro than LeVert. And
that's fair. Would you do Okoro and salary for Richardson if you're Cleveland? I would.
I think I would. I mean, I guess there's the possibility that Okoro finally, puts it together. He's still young, but I think if you're the Cavs, I think this is a right now thing. You don't know how long you're going to have Donovan Mitchell. You don't know how long. I mean, Mobley has upside. Allen is still young. Garland has upside, but if I can get the piece, and Richardson is not ideal, but I think he fits what you need more than LeVert does, doesn't he?
I think he can guard up the positional spectrum more. If you were looking for sort of just higher volume 3-point shooting and some on-ball jet fuel, I'd prefer the GTJ there. So I would make that trade if it's available. In theory, you could make both.
Yeah.
If you're giving up a part, that would really diversify their roster.
I'm going to throw it to you. We didn't talk about this. Do you have a Warriors one trade away target? I mean, other than Alex Caruso?
He would be my trade target over the summer if they don't think they're going to keep DiVincenzo. Him and DiVincenzo feel a little redundant. Yeah. So I don't know if this is a dream, but if the Warriors were, gonna adult up and go out, like Kyle Kuzma would be great for the Warriors, in my opinion. But my actual trade for them, are you ready?
I'm ready.
James Wiseman.
Yep.
Moses Moody.
Yep.
For Cody Martin, PJ Washington, Jalen McDaniels.
Man, so you're getting 3 guys you might be able to play. I don't hate that. I was really hoping you were going to find a way to get Anunoby, but I'm disappointed you couldn't make it happen for me. But
what is their Anunoby package? Is Wiseman, Moody, and 2 first-round picks?
Yeah, that's getting they don't really have the Anunoby package is the problem.
What was their Bojan Bogdanovic package that you were hinting at?
It was going to be Wiseman and Moody and the picks, basically, just to see if you're the Pistons, certainly more so than the Raptors, I think you should have interest in Wiseman and Moody as second draft guys.
Even with Jalen Duren on the roster, though?
Who cares?
Who's already better than James Wiseman?
Oh, yeah. Wait, hold
Charlotte, by the way, has Mark Williams and Kai Jones and Nick Richards and Mason Plumlee, but I'm just like, if you can get James Wiseman, like, why not try that there?
Right. Yeah. No, so you're saying Martin, McDaniels, and Washington. And you're assuming that you're going to keep Washington in restricted free agency potentially, which you probably need to do.
McDaniels, I mean, that makes a free agent as well. So you could also look at it as like, oh, well, we'll keep at least one of these guys, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's so sad that I could see it. Like, it's so sad that that's where we are on that. What about Miami? I don't know. I guess Miami needs a big forward. So are we going to reunite the Martins? Are we going to put them together? Do you have
Kyle Kuzma was perfect for them if Washington's going to sell, and they have picks to give up. You would need to be more money going out, because I assume you want to move Duncan Robinson. Also, Bojan Bogdanovic, they're a great destination. If you can get the Pistons to take on Duncan Robinson's deal, so you're compensating them for that and for Bojan, probably cost you 2 first-round picks at least, maybe even Jovic in there. He would be a perfect fit for them.
Does John Collins do anything for you in Miami?
Oh, he certainly does. What are you giving up to get him? Because it's Duncan Robinson and who? And why is Atlanta doing that trade?
Right. Yeah. I mean, Jovic is just the guy, because the Heat don't have young players. Jovic would have to be in there, and then you've got to cobble together as many picks as you can. Although, again, who knows what Collins' trade value is? We talk about it every week, it feels like. If it's really low, I mean, Robinson's salary is not good. So I don't know if the Heat have the draft capital. So assuming too that any first rounder you get from the Heat is probably not going to be in the lottery, because they just don't really do it that way. That's tough for them to get the picks together, I think, to pull somebody like Collins away. Although who knows? Maybe the Hawks are just going to go in fire sale mode. It's hard to say.
Yeah. So it's just the Heat have the first round equity to get stuff done. And even you could move Victor Oladipo's salary, that short-term commitment to that could facilitate Kuzma talks technically.
Mm-hmm. How are you getting Miles Turner to the Pelicans?
So I have him listed, but my actual targets for the Pelicans at this point, because I don't want to battle New Orleans fans who think that Jonas Valanciunas is somehow better than Miles Turner at this point. Let's just get them like a chucker in there. And so Malik Beasley, Gary Trent Jr., and then here's one, kind of Bogdanovich of Atlanta.
Right. Everyone's available or should be, right, from Atlanta. Yeah, I agree. I think one more guy that you could put out there, and it's not like the Pelicans don't have, a handful of good shooters, but just having more volume, I think, would matter if like Trey Murphy's off or McCollum is not hitting, like, and Ingram ever plays again. That would be nice if he did. Beasley is a guy that I think could fit on like Beasley to Memphis, even though I think we've said they're not a trade away. That's kind of the no brainer. Although honestly, if I'm Memphis, I'm aiming higher than that if I'm going to make a trade. But just someone to come in and just like bomb away. If Dylan Brooks is having a Dylan Brooks game in the worst way, I think that could put and Memphis. Do you think Memphis or New Orleans needs a gunner more?
Ooh, I think Memphis, because if you have a healthy Zion, like your half court offense is inoculated against this.
Yeah.
Like the reason the Pelicans don't shoot threes is because I know the Memphis gets to the rim a ton too, but like you're just designed around this like bowling ball that can move east to west and is just super explosive in Zion. So I think it's Memphis.
Yeah. Memphis has the more glaring half court offense problems, as you pointed out. So that should be the solve.
I will say, just because I do want to see New Orleans get more of a floor spacing, like front court option in there that can give you maybe higher volume than Larry Nance Jr. I have Naz Reid listed for them as well. I don't know what it takes to get him out of Minnesota, but that was just, I thought about that. I also kind of thought, because he's all of a sudden high volume, Isaiah Stewart. I wonder what it would cost to get him from Detroit.
Well, once they have James Wiseman, they're not going to need him. So they're really going to just be looking to give him away for pennies.
The Suns. Are you ready for
give
this?
Me your Suns. No, give me your Suns guy. I was just going to say how I like. It's difficult to if we can't say Miles Turner, we're not allowed to anymore. It's hard to find the Miles Turner type for the Pelicans, but Naz Reid's a really good pull because he's kind of has some of the same characteristics.
I would say Zeke Naji too, but I don't think the Nuggets would trade him, let alone trade him to a Western Conference foe. Where it's like if you're Minnesota, it's kind of like depending on what you're getting, this season's fucked. You have Rudy Gobert and Karl-Anthony Towns moving forward. How important is Naz Reid? And so depending on what the Pelicans are offering.
Yeah. Who's your Suns guy?
Guys, and this speaks to how far away they are from contention at the moment. I have Fred VanVleet or Pascal Siakam. Like those are the guys that I think, look, Kuzma, Eric Gordon, Bojan Bogdanovic, we can run through the gamut of just like if Chris Paul, who I think we've kind of we veered too far to like saying he sucks when I don't think that's the case. I just feel like he's a much lesser player. And I think a lot of this stuff is sort of colored by the Devin Booker injury, the fact that Jay Crowder isn't there, the Cam Johnson injury. DeAndre Ayton has been, I don't want to say terrible on defense. He's been bad. And I think we have to start confronting this idea that, hey, did Phoenix just sign a slightly above average big man to a max contract? And that could be a problem moving forward. I had thought about like, though, you could build like Ayton, even if, look, here's what I had thought about Ayton and the framework is Ayton and for Fred VanVleet. So like there's other stuff involved. Like is Chris Boucher coming back or Thaddeus Young to Phoenix as part of that? But like, would you're losing so much shot creation as Toronto, but they've been obsessed with searching for kind of a big. It would be more natural if you were going Ayton for Siakam and building stuff out there, but who has to send picks back in just the Ayton for VanVleet scenario? And I know people will say, one, Ayton has the no trade clause basically this year. Like he can veto. Let's just, I think he wants out of Phoenix. I think he would accept the trade anywhere.
Yeah.
And then VanVleet with Chris Paul and Devin Booker on the roster, I kind of don't care. I would play all three of those guys together and I just wouldn't care.
Yeah, I think VanVleet does create some problems there, and his player option and free agency also present problems. But on the other hand, no, I think probably Toronto is giving picks just because of the contract stuff. I mean, Ayton's overpaid, I think we agree, but like VanVleet, just the Suns might lose him,
True.
So, I mean, there's addition by subtraction in theory, but like as bad as Ayton has been relative to expectations, like I don't think you're just looking to get off of his contract without getting anything, which would be a possibility. And I'm going to definitely need like, you're going to have to give me Christian Koloko or Boucher or, Precious Achua or somebody back that I can hang on to, in addition to Van Fleet. But yeah, I think Aiton would be fine in Toronto. It would make things would just like start to make more sense roster wise there if he were just that's your center now. No more of this messing around with your 6'7" to 6'9" guy of choice playing center. I think I could get into that.
I think the trade would be Aiton and Campaign for Van Vliet and Boucher. The money works, and then does picks need to go, or you're talking prospects go back and forth there. That would be the framework. Who says no to that? Nobody does. It's a perfect trade.
I think it's perfect. I hesitated for a second, which means it's a perfect trade. I don't know who says no.
Finally, we have the Sixers who are they just can't make moves. They're just so like their picks, and they're so close to being below the luxury tax. They're going to duck it. But the two targets I have for them, they've been linked to like people who make all this money, like Eric Gordon and Bojan Bogdanovic. It's like, no, it's not happening. You're not moving Tobias Harris as part of that trade. So the two names I have, Cody Martin and Josh Hart. And then like kind of the framework for what I have here is Matisse Thybulle and Daniel House, let's say, for Josh Hart. And then you would have to, because the Sixers want to duck the tax, like you compensate someone to take on Furkan Korkmaz,
right?
And to take on Jaden Springer, or like, so that would be the route they go. But those are two targets I have listed for them. And I wonder if like, does Daniel House a second and Matisse Thybulle, like, does that get you in the Josh Hart discussion? Does that get you in the Cody Martin's cheaper? So you wouldn't even need to go maybe that high, but like, let's say Matisse Thybulle and Korkmaz in a second, or I would, Daniel House has not been good this year. And so they tampered to get him, which is kind of disappointing, but
yeah, I think I forget what I was working on, but the Sixers trading Korkmaz and or Thybulle is just like one of the most guaranteed foregone conclusions just because of the tax situation. I hadn't thought about lumping them together to get someone like Hart, and I like that a lot more than trying to send them, to some place with a second rounder attached to get a guy making close to the minimum so you duck the tax. I think, that is a concern, but the Sixers, if they can, should see if they can accumulate enough salary to get like a $10-12 million guy. And I think Hart makes right around 12. And I mean, it wouldn't be the worst thing if he's just off the books next year too. And you could go figure out with your, taxpayer mid-level, the next guy to fill that role potentially.
Yeah, I think like, so Hart makes 13. And so it would need to be something like you send Thybulle and Daniel House to Portland. And then what can you give to, let's say San Antonio? They have all this money, or even in Indiana, to take on the final year of Korkmaz's deal, or to take on, I mean, like, does someone even like, if you don't care about your tax bill, I think Jaden Springer alone would do it. And so would San Antonio or Indiana just take him? Like, that's food for thought, but that would be, it would be a 3-for-1, and you need like a team to take on another player.
Yeah. I mean, if you're talking about Josh Hart, you could talk about Josh Richardson too. I mean, the salaries
Would they want to reunite with him? I like Josh Richardson for them, but I feel like Sixers fans might think that that's sacrilegious.
Yeah, that's a tough look. Like
I might prefer to play him at the 4 than PJ Tucker at points
well,
right now, to be honest with you.
yeah, that's not exactly a homecoming anyone would welcome. But I mean, him and Hart are different players, but it's just another option at that number. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, Cody Martin only makes 7. And so like you could technically lot money off onto the Hornet. Like you could, Thybulle and Daniel House, you duck the tax while getting Cody Martin is a second round sweetener there. Like, do the Hornets value, we have Matisse Thybulle?
Maybe,
maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that I mean, and Martin hasn't played a ton, but the fact that they just signed him again, it would seem weird for them to give up. But I feel like as quirky and as like really narrow as Tybulle's uses are, I could imagine a team, certainly one with like nothing to lose, like a Charlotte or San Antonio, just taking a flyer and like maybe our shooting coach can get him to make 35% of his threes, and we have a great defensive player that can stand in. Like, that he's someone that I think still, in spite of how he's performed, you could talk yourself into some upside if you're a rebuilding team for sure.
And also, Philadelphia has a 2023 second, it's the most favorable from Atlanta, Charlotte, or Brooklyn. And so if you're Charlotte and you can kind of get control back of your own second, which is probably going to be like 32.
Yeah. I mean, the
So
Charlotte Hornets just swinging deals to get control back of second rounders.